Hello, we're going to learn how to graph using the slope and the y-intercept. There's two main types of forms, and there's a couple more out there, but here's the two general forms that we see a linear equation. There's one called standard, in which we have ax plus by equals c. And usually the best way to graph standard, we said use the x and y intercept. Now we have a new one called Slope-Intercept Form. And I'm going to shorthand intercept if you don't mind. I mean that. It is in the form where y is already solved for. Y equals mx plus b. Where m is the slope, as its name implies, and the intercept is the b. Now, more importantly, that's the y-intercept. And y-intercept is always displayed as a point in which x is 0 and our y value will be b. In case you don't believe me, let's go ahead and see why that is true. So we have an equation, y equals mx plus b, and we want to find the y-intercept. Whenever we want to find the y-intercept, we set x equal to 0 and solve for y. So we got y equals mx plus b. Instead of x, we're going to write the value we're plugging in, which is 0. M times 0 is still 0. 0 plus b is b. So y equals b. And that's our coordinate. So when we write it as an ordered pair, it's 0 comma b in parentheses. Now, the beauty of slope-intercept form is that there's not a lot of work we have to do. Standard form makes us find the x-intercept and the y-intercept, which granted isn't that difficult for us to do, but it does require us to do a little bit of math, which leaves room for error. So let's go ahead and see where we're asked to graph something in slope-intercept form. Our first step is to go ahead and identify your y-intercept. We need a point in order to plot or graph on the line. So our b here is positive 2. And we always make sure we check that sign in front of the constant because it goes with it. And since we don't have to write positive, I'm just going to write 2. And the next thing we also need to find is our slope, which is the coefficient in front of the x, which is 3/4. And remember, it has to be in the format y equals mx plus b in order for us to just pull these out. If it's in standard form, then we have to do a little bit of manipulation, and we will see one like that, so hold on. Now that we found the y-intercept and the slope, our first step is to plot that y-intercept. So we're at the origin, our starting point. Our x-coordinate is 0, we're already there, and our y-coordinate is 2. So here's our y-intercept. From the y-intercept, I'm going to use the slope where it is rise over run. My rise is positive 3, so I'll go up 1, 2, 3. And my run is positive 4, so we'll run 1, 2, 3, 4. And we'll put a new point right there. Now this is from this point, so when we go from A to B to find the slope, we go up 1, 2, 3, and we run 4. Connect the dots, and you've graphed the linear equation. Let me get my line, and there we are, done. Not a lot of math to do, right? We just had to pick out the important stuff and then use it onto the graph. So you're probably thinking, well, why did I bother learning standard form? Why don't I just make everything y equals mx plus b? I usually change things into y equals mx plus b. Unless the numbers are really ugly, then I sometimes leave it in standard form. But let's go ahead and see one that is in standard form. So we see something where it's ax plus by equals c. And now we're going to manipulate this. We're going to solve for y. That way we'll have it in the form y equals mx plus b. So, first things first, we have 2x minus y. There's several ways you can view this. This is 2x plus negative y, for those who get a little antsy about switching things. And since it's addition, it's really negative y plus 2x. And now it's a little bit easier. Okay, I want to get y by itself, so I want to undo the plus 2x. So I subtract 2x from both sides. What I do to one side of the equation, I have to do to the other. And now we'll have negative y still left by itself equals, these guys canceled out, 1 minus 2x, which is the same thing as negative 2x plus 1. Do the same idea we did earlier. Now, y is still not by itself because we have a negative out front. So if we divide by negative 1 on both sides, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. We'll now have y by itself equal to, and when we divide by negative 1, each term is divided by it. So we have 2x minus 1. So now it is in the slope-intercept form, in which we can easily identify the slope and the y-intercept, in which here it is negative 1. So we have 0, negative 1. Sign goes with it. Now plot your y-intercept. So at 0, negative 1, we have a y-intercept. And now we got to use the slope. Now if you're worried, you're like, well, it's 2. What do I do? Do I just go up 2? Be careful. This is a whole number, so we can always write it over 1, in which we have rise over run. Because 2 divided by 1 is still 2. So that means from our y-intercept, that's our starting point, we go up 1, 2, and we run over 1. And it's a positive slope, so there is the equation of our line. It's nice and pretty. And that's all. So you can always use this method to graph. Sometimes, since students feel a little fuzzy about this part, or even just getting y by itself, this entire section, they resort back to standard form, in which you find the x and y intercept and graph it. You will get the same thing. The only thing bad about it here, and I intentionally did this, was your x-intercept, if you go ahead and use it, will be 1/2. Notice how it kind of crosses that graph at halfway there. So sometimes if you get a fraction for your x-intercept, that means you probably wanted to change it from standard form into slope-intercept form, just so that your numbers would come out whole. Other than that, you graph any method you like. Pick one that works and just keep using it. If guess and check is your cup of tea, do it. Because for the most part, graphing, as long as you label your points, any professor should be happy that it's the correct format. So that is all. Take care.